Hello again. Now, Nandipha Magudumana has been given a lifeline by the Supreme Court of Appeal. She has been granted permission to challenge a ruling made by the Free State High Court that denied her request to have her arrest ruled illegal. Earlier this year, the High Court ruled that Magudumana had provided consent to return to South Africa when she was arrested in April, along with Thabo Bester in Tanzania. Senior reporter Silindelo Masikane is following this story and joins us now just to really tell us what's going on here. Silindelo, good afternoon. Welcome to today. Just remind us why we have an appeal in the High Court by Magudumana.
Of course, you'd remember back in April, we had Thabo Bester as well as Nandipha Magudumana being deported from Tanzania. And this is after, of course, there was a search by law enforcement in the country to track and trace the pair after it was revealed that, of course, Bester didn't die in a fire in May of 2022, but this was an elaborate plan to escape from the Mangaung prison. And, of course, according to the state, they believe that Nandipha Magudumana played a pivotal and crucial role in his escape, being one of the masterminds behind that escape. Now, what the High Court application in which she launched, what she was saying in those papers was that she was abducted by law enforcement, the South African Police Services in Tanzania, and brought back into South Africa, in essence, illegally. But in the High Court, we had Judge Philip Lopsa siding with the state, saying that while there was a disguised extradition in the manner in which she was brought back into the country, Judge Lopsa believed that she in fact agreed and consented to come back to South Africa, and so he dismissed her applications. Her legal team has subsequently then launched an application in the Supreme Court of Appeal, and according to legal experts, the fact that she has been granted a hearing for this application is a win for her, but in essence it doesn't necessarily mean that she's going to walk away from the charges that she's facing. This only means that she's being afforded another opportunity to challenge the legality with how she was brought back into South Africa. Let's take a listen.
If she's successful in a case, she then walks out because the arrest was unlawful. But the minute she steps out on the court doors, she's rearrested again for the murder charges and all the charges which she's facing. The one thing which is important in this case is that she has not yet pleaded. So it can't be regarded as double jeopardy if she's tried again or rearrested again for the same charges. It's a similar manner in which charges would have been withdrawn and then later preferred against her. So one wonders as to what was the real intention behind this particular process, because it's not going to give you the type of reprieve that any reasonable person would want.
And what about arguments, Silindelo? What kind of arguments are we likely to hear?
Now, I think the basis and the crux of the arguments we're going to hear once this application is heard in the Supreme Court of Appeal is that issue around consent. The fact-finding that was made by Judge Philip Lopsa in his judgment in the High Court was that this was a disguised extradition. So that is the basis in which we are, of course, hearing this application that's going to be heard in the eNCA. So the main arguments are going to be around whether Nandipha Magudumana consented to come back or whether she didn't consent. And it's going to be interesting to hear exactly what the state as well as her legal representatives put to the High Court, because the reason that we have this application even being entertained by the eNCA is that there are reasonable prospects of success, that there was a constitutional issue with regards to how Nandipha Magudumana was brought back. But I think what the question remains is exactly what is the end goal for Nandipha Magudumana with regards to this application. If her end goal is to have charges against her dropped, is to walk out of the Kroonstad prison a free woman, then this is perhaps a futile exercise. But if she's launching this application based on principle, based on the constitutionality of the reasons why she was brought back into South Africa, then we have something that's completely different. We have a situation that could, in essence, perhaps end up at the Constitutional Court with regards to how we operate and how international law in terms of how people are brought back into South Africa is going to be ventilated, Bradan. So legal experts are saying that perhaps she should have gone the other route of continuing with appealing her bail judgment, where she was denied bail, and actually appealing to the High Court, and perhaps she could have been granted bail there if her goal is to try and be released.
If my detention is unlawful, well, then the court's going to probably give a direction to say release the person immediately. But what that would then mean is that the state can then issue a warrant and have her arrested again and brought her before court. And then that process could essentially start. So it would be a great victory to her. It would obviously stand in good stead if the Supreme Court agrees with her. But does it necessarily mean the end of the road? No, I don't think so. The state might want to employ different tactics.
It seems to me, Silindelo, a lot is still about to play out in this case ahead of April next year, when the main case is supposed to resume. Is there a date now for the hearing around this, now that the Supreme Court of Appeal has given her this bit of a lifeline, so to speak?
Not at this stage. I think we're about 2 or 3 weeks away from an actual date in which this hearing will be heard. We know that legal representatives need to submit heads of argument. A date will then be set, perhaps within the next 2 weeks, Bradan. We could see ourselves back in Bloemfontein at the Supreme Court of Appeal for that particular hearing. But in terms of the main case itself, of course, we do know that that's only going to be back in court in the Free State High Court next year in February for a pre-trial conference.
Thank you very much, Silindelo Masikane, for that update. That's this matter involving Nandipha Magudumana.